Seneca says that the path to wisdom isn't in these epiphanies or these big breakthroughs. It's about a habit of trying to get a little bit better each day. I'm Ryan Holiday. I'm the author of The Daily Stoic and The Obstacle is the Way and many other books that have sold millions of copies all over the world. But I'm also the parent of 2 young boys. And in the emails that I write, in the conversations that I have, in how I try to get better as a parent, I'm trying to find one thing. When I'm sitting across from someone here in the Daily Stoic studio, when I am talking with someone who's further along than me, even when I'm talking to relatives of mine, I'm just trying to find like one little thing, one little insight that can make me better at what is, I think, ultimately our most important job. Not raising kids, but trying to raise our kids into functional adult human beings. And in today's episode, I want to take some wisdom that I have accumulated and give you hopefully more than one piece of advice to take away from this video that will make you better at your most important job.
I think it's super important for families to travel together. When kids are young, they're building those core memories that are going to stick with them for the rest of their life. And they need memories of going outside, exploring, being right by dad as dad discovers something while they discover something. That whole, hey son, let me teach you something about this tree, or hey daughter, let me teach you something about how rivers work. There are things you learn on the road and opportunities to teach your kids things that only happen out there. They can't happen inside your house. It's very hard to teach someone the idea of a river in your house, but like getting your feet wet, seeing the creatures, being out there in God's creation, like that's where those real teaching moments happen. And they don't happen locked up in a house.
We have 18 years to work on this little epic called our children.
Yeah.
And we don't own them and make them be like this. You've got children. How quickly? My biggest lesson I got when I first had kids was, I thought it was more culture and environment than DNA. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
The DNA, they are who they are.
Yes.
It was more DNA than I thought.
Yeah.
It was the first lesson I learned. I got slapped in the face by that because I thought it was like the parent is full sculpting. I was like, no, you're nudging and you're carving here and you're trying to put more what's healthy and going to turn them on and feed them in front of them. And you want them to get a few bruises. You don't want to take away all the thicket in the broken glass, but you also don't want them to, break their leg every time they go out the door. So you want to give them a little bit,
Your job is to help your kids become who they are, not become what you want them to be.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to realness. The reason we still want that repair is it's like the things I felt and noticed, please just tell me that they were real. Because if it's like a shared experience of that reality, it feels so much less painful than if I'm the only one continuing to hold that. And whether I'm 10 or 40 or 60, the things that we have stored in aloneness, they are so painful. We just want the aloneness removed. We know they can't be fixed, but we can always remove the aloneness. And if you think, I say this in my TED Talk, no matter how old any of us are, what's always mathematically true is our kids are younger than we were. Okay, that is definitely true for everyone. Okay,
sure.
I can say it with certainty. And so if it would still make a difference in our life for our parents to have some version of that recognition and repair with us, it is, to me, the only proof we need that is never too late with our kids. And so whether you're right, it was 3 days ago, 3 years ago, a pattern of things for the last 20 years, to go to your kid and, in my, in the book and definitely in the TED Talk, there's the scripts. Like I think like having words like, oh, here's how I could start that conversation. Here's how I can open that door. It is never, ever too late. And I do think our body is always seeking connection for the moments that were stored with a lack of connection. I really am. I don't know if I'm like an optimist. I believe that. I think that's always true.
Emotions are contagious. If you show up a little nervous, a little anxious, your kids are going to catch it, but it's going to come out in weird ways. They're going to be overactive or they're going to push your boundaries. It was actually they're just catching your nervousness. Before you approach your kids, especially on something important, find your confidence, find your source, because they're going to catch that and that will make them respond to you better.
In my book, Mastery, to me, the idea of becoming a master in any field, there's one secret, there's one step that is absolutely the most essential in all. That is discovering your life's task, discovering what you were meant to accomplish in life. If you figure that out, everything else will fall into place. And parents play a critical role in the development of their children. They can play a very negative role, and they can play a kind of neutral or more positive role in this sense of helping the child discover their life's task. And what I mean by that is it's very natural for parents to be worried about their child and to say, I want my son or daughter to be able to have a comfortable life, to make a good living, you know. So these are professions that I naturally would gravitate towards. And maybe I'm thinking a little bit about them and about the world today, but I'm kind of putting onto them my own assumptions of what will make them comfortable and secure. And you apply pressure, and that pressure can be very overt. Like perhaps I had some in my childhood where I was like, you need to become a doctor or a lawyer. Or it can be less overt where you kind of steer them in certain directions by the kind of games and activities you have them participate in when they're very, very young. And what you must realize as a parent is you need to let go. You need to let your child blossom. You need to let them be as different from you as possible. There is nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's natural for children eventually to rebel against their parents, to try and create their own identity in the world. That is an extremely healthy dynamic. So it's kind of like a plant that you want to foster and you want to grow in its most original natural form and not hinder it in any way. So by pressuring it directly or indirectly, you're creating a voice in that child's head. And that voice is going to be creating doubts as it gets older and older and older. It's going to be telling itself, well, maybe I shouldn't be so interested in this field. Maybe, music or the arts or entrepreneurship, maybe it's too risky, I was instilled with these levels of fear from my parents from very early on, and I'm still hearing it in my head. And unconsciously, you have influenced them, and you're derailing them from that life's task. So that when a child reaches that critical age of 20, 21, 22, where they're out of this education system if they go to university, and they have to make key decisions in their life, they're no longer connected to who they are as an individual. They're connected to your thoughts, to your fantasies, to your ideas of what they should become. And you're playing a very negative role in their life. So you have to understand the importance of those early years, where you let the child go in whatever direction it wants. In fact, when the child reveals a proclivity towards something, let's say you're an academic and you're intellectual and the child has a proclivity towards sports or dance or something, oh, no. You want to be the opposite. You want them to go in that direction because it reveals something extremely powerful from within. It reveals what I call primal inclinations. Do not get in the way of those primal inclinations in any way, shape, or form, because it'll have terrible consequences later on for the child. That's the most important thing you can do.
When I was coaching college athletes and high school athletes, these were people who made it to D1, very high performers. There were some who even then, if their parent showed up to a race, they would perform poorly because the parent cared, but they didn't realize they were putting this external pressure and almost like a burden on that athlete. So the athlete wanted to do well for them, and that was too much of a burden on them. Sometimes we get in the way as parents, and my advice is care deeply, but that means, unconditional support, and that means getting out of their own way and chilling out when it comes to performance, because that's going to keep them in the game or thing that they're interested in the long haul, and that's what matters most.
My thing now that I'm trying to ease into is what I call a curious elder. And that is someone who kind of assumes the kids are all right, that's just an ethos, that you just kind of assume that your children are all right and they know what they're talking about. And even if it's true that even if they don't, that kickstarts a curiosity. And so I'll give you a real concrete example. Every parent I know is disgusted by their children watching a YouTube video of another person playing a video game.
Yes.
So they watch,
it's inexplicable.
Yeah, but it is. But
yes.
But wait. So I had a day where I was like, I'm just gonna make myself sit here and watch one of these videos with him. And I think it was like a Minecraft hacks video or something, you know, where they blow up the whole world with TNT or something. I don't know. And I was watching it and I was like, this is so weird. We're like in front of the screen and we're watching these other people play a game and we're not playing it, but they're playing it. And I suddenly was like, oh my God, this is like me and my uncle sitting around watching football on Sunday. We're watching like other people do something. The difference is that when we get done watching the video, my kids know how to do something at their game. Whereas like if you watch football, you're not going to be able to like go and like run a touchdown. So, but then I had this other, so like that was like a light bulb. But then I had this other moment where I was like, wait, if people will watch someone play a game, I'll bet someone would watch someone make art, you know? So I got all these ideas for my own business. And that was purely just because that one day I was like, I'm going to sit down with my kids and this thing that repulses me, I'm going to like pay attention to it.
The power of relationship is so profound. If you're invested in having a close connected relationship with your child, doesn't mean you're not going to upset them when you set a limit, doesn't mean that they're not going to get annoyed with you and you're not going to get annoyed with them. But if you are invested in that relationship, there is so much fertile soil for them to thrive.
Yeah, I mean, like getting the kids to school every morning, I think is one of the most valuable things as a parent, those sorts of routines.
Yeah.
My children, like with breakfast, those sorts of routines, like consistency as a parent, I've found to be is one of the kind of the most rewarding things from a child's perspective. It's very hard to get into the mind of a 4-year-old, of an 8-year-old, but when there's consistency at hand, like you can really see the response from them.
Yeah. What's interesting, right? Like you can see if your kid's routine is disrupted, you see how disrupted they are, right? Like if you normally do things a certain way, or if your life is chaos, you see how it manifests in their behavior. And then we're not that different. Like I realize that if I don't have a routine, my behavior suffers and my willpower suffers and my equanimity suffers. And so I think the idea is like, everyone should be on a sleep schedule. Everyone should be on a routine. It's a human thing as opposed to a kid thing.
Yeah.
If you want to get better at your most important job, I send out one piece of parenting advice every single day. That's the Daily Dad newsletter. It's followed by hundreds of thousands of parents all over the world. It's totally free, no spam. You can sign up right now for free at dailydad.com.